Welcome to Creepypasta Theater, a show where we explore the strange world of creepypasta. Join us as we hear tales best left untold, travel roads best left unexplored, and see sights best left unseen. Today's story: the Postmortems. Author unknown. This story can be found on creepypasta.fandom.com and is protected by Creative Commons license. I was born into a rather wealthy family. We had a big house, a giant backyard, and all the other necessities that any other rich family would have in their homes. My mom and dad were the stereotypical rich husband and wife, always playing tennis in the courtyard and drinking expensive wine from their champagne glasses. I, however, hated the lavish lifestyle that was so unnaturally forced upon me. Always having to wear expensive clothes and keep a clean trimmed head, or the occasional house gathering my parents so passionately hosted. I never had very many friends either. My parents would always try to introduce me to the snobby kids next door or the well-mannered kids from the private schools I resented so much. Tommy, the one person I'd actually like to be around, was kind of like me, except more troubled. Tommy comes from a less fortunate family than mine, so I rarely get to see him due to parental trust issues. The few times I have been to his house, however, were amazing. We were hardly ever inside, always finding new places to skate or any other miscellaneous things to do outside. But the best part of going to his house was that he lives right next to a lake. Lake Creator, to be exact. From what Tommy told me, it was a very large, very old lake, and because of this, Tommy would always try to unnerve me with old urban legends surrounding the lake. I went over to his house a couple days ago when it was raining outside, so his mom made us stay inside. I was excited because it meant I could play games my mom would most likely disapprove of. Tommy, however, had different plans. At about 2 a.m., we snuck out and made our way down to the lake, packing only a couple of blankets and some flashlights with extra batteries just in case. By the time we reached the lake, the rain had stopped falling, though there was a thick blanket of fog covering the now calm waters. While we set up, Tommy started to tell me another urban legend around the lake, though this one seemed more sinister. He tried to convince me that every Sunday at exactly 3:33 a.m., a ritual took place on the eastern shore of the lake. A cult, known by few as the Postmortems, would burn members of the higher society at the cross and spread their ashes in the lake as a sacrificial bond. I fell asleep ending Tommy's sadistic horror story, only to have my subconscious mind conjure up something wicked. For the greed of thy neighbor shalt shadow upon the dystopian nature of the present state, was repeated over and over again in my head by what sounded like the raspy voice of an elderly woman. I was suddenly being lifted by something my mind would not let me see. Higher and higher, I was lifted until I finally stopped. My arms were spread in a horizontal manner and my feet put into a folded position. I looked down and noticed my nose was bleeding. I brought up my hand to my face to wipe the blood, only there was none. It just seemed to be dripping from nowhere. My head was pulled back, revealing a black sky, and from it came water. Not clear rainwater, but rather a brown, murky water. The water hit me and stayed there. I flailed my arms and legs, trying to gasp a breath of air. I was suddenly dropped from the sky, falling and falling for what seemed like hours. Finally, I hit the ground, waking me from my uncomfortable sleep. I was blinded by several bright lights illuminating the area around me, revealing scores of black hooded figures. I tried to get up, but my arms were tied to the left and right sides of a wooden cross, as well as my feet being tied to the bottom. 3 figures stepped forward and placed a box on the ground in front of me, and then quickly retreated back to their ranks. The faint sound of drums could be heard off in the distance, slowly growing louder until I could see who was making the sound. 4 of the black hooded figures marched in a line, playing the drums in unison. There were 4 other figures behind them, carrying what looked like a throne. On the throne sat a fairly tall being, dressed in crimson red from the neck down, and a black hood covering his face. The throne was set on the ground, only a few yards away from me. The man in red stood slowly and walked towards me, putting his face against mine and licking my cheek. He reeked of cheap whiskey and cigarettes, making for an unbearable aroma that stuck around even after he backed away. He picked up and opened the box, revealing a silver lighter inside. The red man raised his hands, and thus the entirety of the congregation pulled matches from their robes, which they struck immediately. I cried out for help, but to no avail, for the closest house was a mile away. I squirmed against the restraints, though I knew my actions were futile. The Crimson Man sat back on his throne and struck his lighter, causing the congregation to walk forward with matches in front of them. One by one, they threw their matches on the cross, igniting the flames. The flames engulfed me as I screamed and cried for help, though I knew it would never come. What I felt next was worse than the feeling of being burnt alive. The Crimson Man tore off his hood, exposing the familiar face of my only friend, Tommy. A sickly smile grew on his face as he watched me burn. For the greed of thy neighbor shalt shadow upon the dystopian nature of the present state. You have been listening to a presentation of Point of Insanity Game Studio. Visit us on the web at www.poigamestudio.com. Follow me on most social media sites at POI Game Studio, and check out my music channel on YouTube at Al Seeger Music.